Hey guys, Al here with Naz Brew, episode 1. We're going to brew up a Gose, a Goslar, Germany, 13th century style, salty, a little sour, a little salty, coriander in there, a wheat beer. And then we're going to make a second runnings batch with the grain from the first batch, and we're going to make a rye PA with that. The second runnings batch is whenever you take the spent grain from the first batch and you just steep it again to get,
every last bit of the sugars out of there
that you want to ferment into the alcohol. So, and then you have to, I'm going to boost up the grain bill with a little liquid malt extract to get the ABV up there like we want. That's going to be our 2 beers for today. So let's go do it. So we got 4 pounds of American 2-row, and we got 6 pounds of North American white wheat. Add the grain to your mash tun. So we're heating 5 gallons for the mash and 3.5 gallons for the sparge. $165. Once you have your mash water, or 5 gallons up to 165, turn off the heat and add it to the grain. And our mash temp is 153, which is pretty perfect. It's exactly where I want it to be. And make sure you stir it as to not get any what's called dough balls. The grain will form these balls and not get completely saturated, so make sure you stir it in very well. And we're going to put the lid on and stir it every 15 minutes for an hour. So we didn't add the acidulated malt yet because it's acidulated. It is going to lower the pH of the mash, which could have some effect on the saccharification process, turning the sugars in the grain, or the starches in the grains to sugars. So we didn't want to mess with that. And after the mash is done for an hour, we'll add the 2 pounds of acidulated malt and get it nice and acidified, hopefully. So in the first tank, this will be our sparge water, the 3.5 gallons that we're heating here, and that is used to rinse the grain that's steeping right now in the mash. And after that's mashed for our allotted time, we will drain it into our kettle. That will be our wort to boil. the hour, and I will add 2 pounds of acidulated malts to our mash. And we'll take another temperature reading. Give it another stir. And the acidulated malt's just going to add a little bit of acidity, and it's not gonna knock your socks off or anything. It's just gonna add a nice crispness to the beer, the end product here. We are at 147, which is right where we want to be, and now we let it sit for another hour. The style we're brewing today started in Goslar, Germany in the 13th century, and it gets its name from the river Gose that runs through Goslar and Leipzig, and they would use the waters from the Gose River to use in their brewing, so it came out of the salt mines there and had a little bit of acidulatedness to it and saltiness to it, and they would add coriander as well. And it just makes this very drinkable, very moderate alcohol level, maybe like 4 to 5%, but very drinkable, very, very delicious beer. One of my favorite styles, so I'm really glad I'm sharing it with y'all, and hopefully you brew it yourself and experience it. It's just like it's one of my favorite beers, and it's great. It is just a great beer. Sparge water is at 170, 171, so we'll kick the heat off. We got about 12 minutes left for our grains to steep a little longer with the acidulated malt. So we're going to put our sparge water into this tank, and it should hold temperature for the next 12 minutes. That shouldn't be a problem. And then we'll start to strain the wort into our kettle. Now that we're ready to start draining our wort from the grains, you'll see that the first stuff to come out is not so clear. It's got a lot of grain bits in it, and you're going to want to let this run for I usually do probably a gallon or two, maybe 2 or 3, and just let that kind of filter out, and the grain bed will set up and it'll start to run a lot more clear. And then we just kind of redistribute back on top. And when you redistribute the not so clear wort, you kind of just want to let it trickle down the sides as not to mess with the grain bed setting up too much. Alright, so as you can see, it's a lot clearer than it was. It's not going to be perfectly clear, but as long as we don't have any large pieces of grain coming through, yeah, we're pretty good there. And I let it go for probably about, only about 1.5 gallons, I'd say. But at this point, you can start collecting right into your kettle. So now that we're collecting our wort in the kettle, once the grain gets about, I'd say, 1 inch below the water line, you don't really want it to be too much closer than that. We're going to start sparging with our fly sparge here. We've got a fly sparge attachment. And you want to do it at the same rate that the wort is flowing out of here. You want the same kind of the same rate of flow through there to try to keep an equilibrium here until we collect all of our wort. Alright, I can just barely, I know it's kind of hard to tell here, but you can see the grain is coming up above the water line here, so we're just going to turn on our sparge water. Get that going. Like I say, you want it about the same rate that you're coming out. So we're going to have to probably turn it down a bit. And this process is to rinse the grain of the remaining sugars to extract as much sugar as you can for the wort, which will ferment into alcohol. So now we got that set up, we just let it go the rest of the way until we extract as many gallons as we're shooting for here. And now that all the sparge water has been added, we're just waiting for it to drain completely. And we got a nice, pretty clear coming through. There is liquid running through that. That's how clear we want it. We're going for a really light beer. And you can see there's some particles. Some particles will get through. I like to use one of these guys to get any remaining bits, just to have the clearest wort possible. This little tea strainer thing works really well. Yeah. So we ended probably just a hair above 6.5 gallons. After the boil, we'll probably be at about 5.5 gallons, and after fermentation, we'll be right at 5 gallons or so. So that's exactly what we wanted. I can live with that. Shooting for a ½ ounce of, we're doing Fuggles today. I'm just using something that's got a relatively low alpha acid. 4.4%. You don't really want too much of a hop presence in the Gose style. Just enough. So a ½ ounce, that's not going to really add too much to the party, but it's going to add exactly what we need. And I like Fuggles. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that steam rising up from that wort. Oh yeah. It's waiting on it to boil. And as soon as it starts boiling, we can add these hops. Oh yeah. Shooting for 1.5 gallons of water, we're going to start sanitizing. From this point forward, with this brew, everything must be sanitized. Everything that it comes in contact with must be sanitized. Everything must be clean. Sanitize, 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 sanitize. I like using 5-star chemicals and Supply Inc. Sandy Clean, the low foaming, and there's a little recipe for 24 ounce, my little spray bottle. But for the 1.5 gallons we've got collected right now, we need a ½ ounce, and that will make our sanitizer. We have to sanitize our plate chiller. I'm using a plate chiller to chill the wort after it gets boiled. And we've got wort in, wort out, water in, water out. So we've got a tube going from our sink, which I will tape that up later and you'll see how ridiculous that is, to the water in, water out, to the bathroom. And these tubes will not need sanitized because they will not be coming in contact with our wort. We have a tube from wort in. We've got a tube from our kettle. Essentially, that tube will not need sanitized because the boiling wort will be hot enough to sanitize it as it flows through it. But we do need to sanitize this whole thing because as it chills, it will be flowing through here. And as it comes out, that tube will also need sanitized. The tube coming from out going into our bucket. Things being sanitized. Our wort chiller. Our plate chiller. Tube. Bucket. Airlock. Thermometer. We'll put that in Jen. Pipette. Now your wort will foam up like this. It's just all the proteins in it boiling to the top here, but they'll dissipate after the rolling boil. See, it's coming up. It'll dissipate that. But we can add our hops. And at this point, one power to go. So as the first beer is boiling, wort is boiling. Heat up 5 gallons of water for the second runnings batch. And by the time this is done, hopefully we'll have this up to maybe about 170 or so. 168, 170. And then we will put it back into our mash tun and get any bit of remaining sugars that may be in there. And to fill out the rest of the sugars for that brew, we're going to be using rye malt extract. 4 pounds of it in a 5 gallon batch. And that should get us a nice ABV. And we won't have wasted any sugars from any of our grains. We are using pink Himalayan salt and ground coriander for the Gose. 0.85 ounces of the Himalayan salt and a little over a ½ ounce of ground coriander and a little bit of whole coriander just to get me to that amount. I ran out of coriander, but that should be plenty. So one tube is hooked up to the faucet with tape, running through cold water with ice in it. Running to our plate chiller here. Comes in, comes out of the hose, running into the shower. When that's done boiling, the wort will travel through this tube and run opposite to where the cool water is running in. It'll be running, on a different level of the plates to chill the wort, and it will come out through here and into our bucket. Then we just need to add yeast and let it turn into beer. 2 minutes left, and I just added the salt and coriander, and it's already disappeared into the wort. There it is. I think it's the hops. So we got about 2 minutes left. Still waiting on this second runnings batch water to heat up. So usually I have that heated before I start chilling the wort for the first batch, but it looks like I'm gonna have to do that after this one. And now that the wort is done boiling, take the hops out and just squeeze them to get the last remaining bits of wort out. And we'll get the coriander out as well and do the same. And now we can siphon it into the bucket. So we're siphoning off the beer. It's getting pretty full now. Haven't temped it yet, but I'm sure we're down around 68, 67 degrees. And to get a lot of coagulants and proteins, hop fibers in the bottom. I always try to lift my kettle up towards the end with the lid. Get a little angle, that way you can kind of get a lot of the liquid and not a lot of the solids there, the proteins. Alright, we got 5 gallons pretty much exactly, maybe a hair above. We are looking at, oh, it's a little lower than I thought we were gonna get to. 66.3. That works for me. We're gonna take this. We're gonna ferment this beer a little lower than room temperature, so 66 sounds really nice. And we've already got our sample here in the pipette. So I'm gonna go get some yeast and pitch it. So I'm using Sapale WB-06 wheat beer yeast. And I decided to use dry yeast and just kind of sprinkle it on top, let it hydrate for about 5 minutes, then stir it up real good. Make sure you make a lot of air bubbles when you stir. Put the lid on, and that beer is ready to start fermenting. And next, we'll be putting that water into there, getting our second runnings batch going, and getting our second 5-gallon batch of the day. So this is not a very good shot, but this is our gravity and my Brix refractometer. You can see, well, you can't really see, but that's what we're looking at. We're at about 12.5 Brix, which is on the left, or 1.052 original gravity, which is on the right. And our wort yeast is ready to be stirred. This is a refractometer. This is what I'm using to take my gravity readings with. It's really nice because you only use a couple drops on the end here, and you can save a lot of wort that way. Alright, we're going to do a nice vigorous stir here. I say splash around a lot, make a lot of air bubbles. The yeast like oxygen. Nice and foamy. And there we are. We're going to put a lid on it and stick it somewhere for a couple weeks. And by somewhere, I mean in my fermenting cooler. So we've got the set point set at 66 degrees. That'll be keeping us around 65, 66 in there for fermentation. And we'll let that go for about, I like to let it go, usually only need like 2 weeks, but I like to let it go for 3 weeks. Helps for quick clarification. Hell, I might even let it go for 4 weeks. These guys are great. The A419 internal thermostat override system helps me keep this chest freezer at whatever temperature I want. I think they're under $100. Very nice.
Okay guys, that about wraps up the Gose Brew Day. Hope you learned a little something. It's a fantastic style. I hope you take this opportunity to follow along in the video and hopefully brew it yourself. Don't forget to hit subscribe down below. Follow us on Instagram. You know, I'm always putting out stuff, and we're hopefully going to bring a lot more content to you guys in the future. Thanks, guys. Herds and Brew, check it out.